I was washing dishes when I heard the soft click of the door behind me. I turned and there she was. My daughter Emma, glowing in her white wedding dress. The same one she wore just 3 days ago. Her cheeks were pink, her smile wide, but something in her eyes made my heart skip. Behind her stood Jake, her new husband, holding a white envelope in his hand. "Hi, Mom," Emma said cheerfully, walking into the kitchen like nothing had changed. "We just wanted to stop by before our honeymoon." Jake smiled too, that polite kind of smile people use when they're hiding something. He sat down, placed the envelope on the table, and tapped it gently with his fingers. "This will help us all work together better," he said. "You know, money stuff, planning for the future." My hands froze midair, still wet from the sink. I didn't touch the envelope. I just stared at it. Emma nodded, her smile tightening. "It's just papers, Mom. Jake's really smart with money. We want to make a special account for when we have babies." Her voice trembled slightly, like she wasn't sure if she was explaining or convincing. My stomach twisted. The envelope was thick, heavy, with my name written across it in neat handwriting. Jake stood up, brushing crumbs off his hands like he was already part of my home. "Just look at it when you can," he said softly. "It'll save time later." When they left, the kitchen felt colder. The clock ticked louder than before. I sat down, staring at the envelope for a long time before I finally opened it. My hands shook. Inside were legal papers, ones I had apparently already signed, giving Jake control of a joint account linked to my name. And that's when I knew. This wasn't about family. It was about money. When I saw those pages, I felt numb. Every memory of the funeral, the muted condolences, the odd quiet of the house after my husband died, came rushing back. I had never told a soul about the money. After the will, after the lawyers, I quietly moved most of it into a secret trust under a different name. Only the barest accounts remained in my usual banking. Small, forgettable, the kind of things people don't think to rob. 17 years with him taught me to bury things that could hurt the people I loved. Money was one of them. But as I flipped through Jake's neatly printed sentences, clauses handing him control, signatures waiting for my pen, I felt my face go hot. They were trying to map me, make me hand over what I had hidden. I imagined the happy photos from Emma's wedding album tearing into pieces. I imagined her laughing in the park with Jake and never suspecting what he was really planning. I set the papers down like they burned me and called Mike, my old lawyer who knew the family and my ways. "Something's wrong," I said, voice low. "They're pushing for money already. Emma wore the ring 3 days ago and they're here with contracts." Mike listened, quiet and efficient, the voice of someone who had handled storms before. "Let me come over," he said. "Bring those papers." I didn't want him to just read them. I wanted a tool that would show me who Jake really was. After we talked, I asked for something else, something bold. Create a paper trail that would look real enough for a greedy man to find and act on, but small enough that if he tried to take it, it would be a waste and a trap. Mike hesitated only a second, then promised a document that would say I had far less than I did, with bank transfers and receipts that looked genuine. He warned me about risk and ethics, but he also understood that sometimes you had to trick a fox with his own shadow. By the time he left with a flash drive and a promise, I had already decided to lay a false breadcrumb, to see who would bite. I tucked the fake disclosure into my drawer and left it where someone nosy might spot it. And then I waited, every sound in the house a possible sign of discovery. Days passed and the house felt like a stage set. Every creak a suspicion, every knock a scene change. Then the bank called. Someone had tried to log into an old account that I barely remembered opening under my maiden name. The attempt came from a device registered to Emma's tablet, and the timestamp matched the hotel where they'd stayed after the wedding. My heart dropped as if it had been pushed. My daughter had trusted him with her passwords. I didn't tell Emma right away. Instead, I sat in my study and let the fear settle into a slow, furious plan. Mike and I worked through the night. He pulled computer forensics, traced IP addresses, and found a login pattern that could only belong to someone who knew exactly where to look. The more we uncovered, the colder the picture became. Jake hadn't stumbled into our lives by accident. He'd been looking for a nest to land in. I set the fake disclosure where any curious person might find it, and within 48 hours an attempt was made. He'd bitten. The audacity of it made me sick, but also furious in a way that sharpened my mind. I called Emma and asked her to come over alone. I needed to see her face without a man's shadow beside it. When she arrived, I gave her cake and a quiet seat at the table where I'd once braided her hair. And I told her the truth slowly, like peeling an old bandage. She recoiled. "You set him up?" she cried. And I didn't flinch. "I set a trap to see who wanted you or my money," I said. The betrayal in her eyes cut me deeper than Jake ever had. She ran, hurt and hurtful. And for a raw night I feared I had lost my daughter to anger and pride. But the next morning proof arrived. Videos from the wedding. A laugh caught on a phone where Jake boasted, "Give me a month, you'll see." That smug voice on a shaky clip glued the next move to my palms. Evidence is a language greedy men don't like to parse. I replayed that video until my chest burned. His laugh, it wasn't just arrogance, it was ownership. Like he'd already claimed us both. That night I sent the clip to Mike. Within an hour he called back, his tone clipped and cold. "This isn't just manipulation, Beth," he said. "This is fraud in the making." He wanted to move fast, gather proof, alert the right people, but I stopped him. "Not yet," I whispered. "He needs to think I'm blind." I wanted Jake to feel safe, to dig his own hole deeper. The next day, I went to Emma's place with flowers and an apology. My daughter opened the door with swollen eyes. "Mom, I can't believe you'd spy on us." I smiled softly, forcing warmth into my trembling hands. "You're right, sweetheart. I was wrong." She hesitated, and I could see her fighting herself, torn between anger and the mother she'd loved her whole life. Then Jake appeared behind her, his hand resting on her shoulder possessively. "Come in, Mrs. Price," he said smoothly, as if inviting a stranger. I stepped inside, scanning the room quietly, the photos, the half-packed suitcases, the unopened mail on the counter. They were planning something. My voice was calm when I asked, "When are you leaving for your honeymoon?" "Tomorrow morning," Emma said softly. "Just a week in Cancun." Jake smiled. "Plenty of time to relax and think about family investments." I nodded, pretending not to notice the brief flicker of greed in his eyes. That night, I sat by my window long after midnight, the streetlights painting thin gold lines across the floor. I wasn't crying. I was memorizing every detail. His tone, his timing, his smile, because soon he wouldn't just be my daughter's husband. He'd be my biggest mistake. The morning of their flight, I woke before dawn. The air felt too still, too careful, like the world was holding its breath. I made tea, sat by the kitchen table, and opened my laptop. Mike had sent over the final files, fake transfers, false account logs. Everything designed to look irresistible to a greedy man. I sent one last email from a new address, pretending to be a careless banker who'd accidentally attached a confidential statement showing a balance just shy of $300,000. Then I waited. By noon, Jake had taken the bait. I knew because Mike's tracker pinged. Someone had opened the file, downloaded it twice, then forwarded it to a secondary email under Jake's name. I closed my eyes and exhaled slowly. The trap was working. Emma called me later that evening from the airport, cheerful again. "Mom, I'm sorry for how I reacted. Jake said you were just trying to help. We're good now." My throat tightened. I wanted to scream, "No, you're not good, you're drowning and don't even know it." But instead I just said, "I'm happy for you, sweetheart." After she hung up, I opened the small wooden box where my husband's letters still rested. His handwriting stared back at me, neat and patient. He had always said, "Trust is a gift, not a habit." I finally understood what he meant. 2 days later, while Emma posted sunny pictures from Mexico, Jake made his move. He contacted a financial consultant, one of Mike's associates, pretending to manage my hidden account, and arranged a transfer. Every message, every digital footprint was recorded. He was so confident, so predictable. And the irony? The money he thought he was stealing didn't even exist. What he really took was evidence. Evidence that would ruin him the moment I chose to speak. By the time they returned from Mexico, the mask had started to slip. Emma looked tired, her glow dimmed, and Jake's smile had an edge to it, too forced, too careful. He greeted me with exaggerated warmth, called me Mom, and kissed my cheek like nothing had happened. But his eyes flicked around the room, scanning for clues, for the scent of money. I offered coffee and quiet conversation, pretending to be the harmless, grieving widow again. Inside I was fire, steady and waiting. That evening, I told him I'd been thinking about family investments, watching how quickly his expression softened. You know, Jake, I said gently, maybe you were right. Maybe it's time to combine our resources. He nearly tripped over his own excitement. Really? That's great, Beth. I can handle the setup, make sure everything's secure. I smiled faintly. Of course. I trust you. The word trust tasted like poison. That night I called Mike and said, he's ready. Tomorrow I'll hand him the rope. The plan was simple. Jake would come over, I'd sign a fake document giving him access to a family fund, and every bit of the exchange would be recorded on hidden cameras Mike had installed earlier that day. The next afternoon, Jake arrived with his laptop and that same smug energy that had once charmed my daughter. Emma followed, quiet, distracted, holding her phone like it was her only friend. I led them both to the table where my husband used to read the morning paper. Let's make this official, I said, sliding the fake folder toward him. His hands trembled with excitement as he clicked through the pages, eyes darting to numbers that didn't exist. He didn't notice Emma's confused frown, or the tiny red light blinking on the bookshelf behind him. By the time he pressed confirm on that final fake transfer, his fate was sealed. And all I had to do now was wait for him to destroy himself. When Jake hit send, the room hummed with a silence so loud I could hear my own pulse. He leaned back, satisfied like a hunter who'd bagged his prey. Emma looked up, hope flickering on her face, and for a painful second I almost wished I could hug her and tell her everything would be simple. Instead I kept my smile thin and steady. There, it's done, Jake said, voice soft with triumph. He didn't notice the way his fingers left prints on the fake documents, the small details Mike would later point out in court. He didn't see the notary stamp Mike had forged for show, or the phony bank confirmation Mike had crafted to look legitimate. He only saw the promise of easy money and the illusion of control. After they left, I breathed as if I'd been underwater and finally reached the surface. I walked to the sink, turned the tap, and let the water wash my hands, like rinsing away the part of me that had to play deceiver. My phone buzzed. Mike. He'd captured everything, screenshots, timestamps, the IP addresses that tied Jake to the attempt on my account, and the forwarded file from Emma's tablet. We had him in pixels and paper, but victory felt brittle. I had tricked my daughter into doubting me, had driven a wedge between us I feared might not heal. The next morning, as the news of a quiet civil settlement in a nearby town filtered through my feed, my neighbor knocked with flowers and whispers, assuming I'd celebrate. I nodded politely, kept my lips sealed. The truth wasn't a thing to parade. It was a shield we'd use at the precise moment. Days blurred into a careful routine. Calls with Mike, quiet walks, watching Emma at the market buying vegetables, watching the small way she smiled at a stranger's joke. Each smile knifed me with love and with guilt. I held the proof like a sleeping animal, tired, dangerous, needing protection. The plan was in motion, and all that remained was the final act. To force Jake into a choice he couldn't walk back from, and to do it in a way that left my daughter whole. The morning of the meeting felt absurdly ordinary. Sunlight across the table, a kettle humming, birds arguing outside. Small things that make danger feel distant. I asked Emma to come over for coffee and she arrived with tired eyes and a fragile hope that perhaps time had smoothed things. I don't want to fight, she whispered, and I believed her. I told her about simple things. Groceries, a silly neighbor story, the way the lilies were finally blooming, so she wouldn't feel ambushed. But I was building a quiet stage beneath our normal talk. Mike had arranged for a mediator to be nearby, a neutral person who could step in if needed, and a reporter willing to sit on a story until we were ready to show the evidence. My hands held a cup of tea I hardly tasted because my mind kept replaying Jake's laugh from the wedding, the way he'd promised a payoff in a month. I picked a date that gave him a false sense of safety, enough time for him to think the danger had passed, not enough for him to repair his scheme. That afternoon, Emma left to run an errand and I called Mike with a single sentence. Now. He arrived like a shadow, calm and efficient, and we moved to the next part of the plan. We sent a polite email to Jake's office requesting a family meeting to discuss paperwork. He responded too quickly, hungry for control. We arranged the meeting in a glass-walled conference room downtown, public, visible, easy for witnesses to notice. I wore a dress that made me look ordinary and harmless. Emma wore jeans because she begged not to make the meeting feel formal. When Jake walked in, confidence wore him like cologne. He sat in the center chair as if the room belonged to him. Mike placed the printed packet on the table, and I watched him flip through pages with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Then Mike began to read, clear, slow, patient, every recorded action Jake had taken. The forwarded files, the hotel IP, the attempted transfer, the recorded brag at the wedding. As each sentence landed, I watched Jake's face crumble, not with rage, but with the cold horror of a plan unraveling in front of witnesses. For a moment, no one breathed. Jake's fingers twitched over the papers, his smirk faltering as the color drained from his face. "This is ridiculous," he said, forcing a laugh. "Anyone could have faked those records." Mike didn't even blink. "Except your login came from a device registered to Emma's name, and the IP trace leads straight to your account at work." The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush a lie. Emma turned slowly toward him, her eyes wide, lips trembling. "Jake, what is he talking about?" He tried to reach for her hand, but she pulled it back like his touch burned. "Sweetheart, listen to me," he said quickly, the practiced tone of a man used to twisting words into safety nets. "Your mom is confused. She's trying to protect what's hers. She's setting me up." I didn't speak. I just slid a small USB drive across the table. "Then maybe you can explain this," I said quietly. He hesitated, and I pressed play on Mike's laptop. The screen lit up with that wedding clip, the one where Jake's voice, half drunk and full of greed, said, "Give me a month, you'll see." His smile froze midword as the sound filled the room. Emma covered her mouth, tears spilling down her cheeks. You said that about her? About my mother?" Jake's jaw worked, but no words came. Mike leaned back, arms crossed, letting the silence finish the job. The room was glass, and I could see people outside pretending not to watch, sensing the collapse of something private and ugly. "I didn't mean," Jake started, but I stood up, cutting him off. "You meant every word," I said. "And you almost got it all." I gathered my things calmly, like a woman closing a door that had stayed open too long. "You're lucky I still have a heart. This doesn't have to go public. If you walk away now." His face twisted with disbelief. "You wouldn't dare." I leaned closer, my voice steady as ice. "Try me." Jake laughed once, a brittle sound that didn't reach his eyes, then reached into his jacket as if to pull something. Maybe words, maybe a threat, but Mike's hand was already on the folder, blocking him like a gate. "We'll give you one chance," Mike said, voice low and steady. "Sign the separation papers, remove any claims on Emma's accounts, and agree to a non-disparagement clause. Walk away and we'll make this quiet." Jake's face turned from anger to calculation in a blink. He had always been good at measuring risk. For a heartbeat I saw the man who charmed at the reception, laughing with friends, promising future fortunes. Then I saw the tiny cracks, the way his confidence wavered when the spotlight hit him. He glanced at Emma, as if searching for rescue in her eyes, and she met him with a face I had once known as a child's, hurt then resolute. "Do it," she whispered, voice small but hard. He hesitated, and in that pause his bravado finally died. He signed like a man reading a verdict. The pen scratched across the paper, a sound that felt like a closing curtain. After he left, the air around us was thick with every emotion I hadn't allowed myself to feel: relief, rage, grief, and a fierce, aching love for the daughter who had trusted too quickly. We sat in the lawyer's office until the sun dipped low, talking in bits and starts about betrayal and forgiveness, about the way money can polish people into something unrecognizable. Emma cried for the life she had believed would be, and I cried too, not from victory, but from the cost of keeping her safe. We both understood something new. Secrecy can protect, but it can also wound. As the evening wound down, Emma reached across the table and took my hand, squeezing it until the tremor in my fingers eased. "No more secrets," she said, and I nodded, feeling a small stubborn hope that this might be the first honest thing we'd shared in years. For weeks after that meeting, the house felt like it was learning to breathe again. I caught myself listening for footsteps that would never come, waiting for phone calls that didn't ring. The silence was strange, peaceful, yet haunted. Emma stayed with me for a while, sleeping in her old room where the wallpaper still held faint marks of her teenage dreams. We cooked dinner together, talked about small things, avoided the big ones. Some nights she'd walk out to the porch, staring into the dark like she was trying to unsee everything. "He said he loved me," she murmured once, and the pain in her voice wasn't anger, it was disbelief. I wanted to tell her that people like Jake use love as a mirror. They show you what you want to see until you stop looking at them and start seeing yourself. But instead I just said, "I know, sweetheart," and let her lean her head on my shoulder. Mike called often, updating me on the slow process of finalizing the papers. Jake had agreed to the settlement quietly. He wanted to vanish before the truth followed him. But I knew men like him never disappeared completely. They waited, watching for new angles, new prey. Still, life was settling back into shape. I tended my garden again, brewed my tea in the mornings, read my husband's letters when the house felt too empty. Yet there was one letter I'd never shown anyone, the one he wrote the week before he died. It had a single line that had stayed with me ever since. The people who reach for what isn't theirs always end up choking on their own hands. That night I found myself whispering those words into the quiet. And for the first time in months I didn't feel afraid. I just felt ready for whatever truth came next. The next few months passed in a strange rhythm. Quiet days stitched with moments of uneasy peace. Emma found a small apartment across town. Close enough to visit but far enough to breathe. She started working again, volunteering at the local clinic, finding pieces of herself that Jake had dimmed. Every time she laughed now it sounded different, lighter, real. I stayed behind in the old house, surrounded by my husband's books and the scent of worn wood. Slowly learning that survival doesn't always mean moving on. Sometimes it just means staying still until the world stops spinning. One morning I got a letter. No return address, just my name written in rushed handwriting. Inside was a single sheet. "You think you won. But some things don't stay buried." There was no signature, but I didn't need one. I could feel Jake's arrogance bleeding through every letter. Mike traced it easily to a cheap postal center in another state, but it didn't matter. The man was desperate, maybe even frightened. Desperate people send warnings when they've already lost control. I folded the note neatly and burned it over the sink. The flame curled the edges until they turned to ash, floating upward like ghosts that had finally learned how to leave. That night I sat on the porch looking at the stars, thinking about everything that had happened. The lies, the traps, the quiet victories that never felt like triumph. Emma called me just before midnight. "Mom," she said softly, "I wanted to thank you for not giving up on me." My throat tightened. "You never gave me a reason to." "Still," she whispered, "you fought for me when I wouldn't have fought for myself." I didn't have words for that. So I just said what I'd waited months to say. "Welcome home, sweetheart." For the first time in nearly a year, peace didn't feel borrowed, it felt earned. Emma began visiting every Sunday, bringing groceries and stories from the clinic. Sometimes she'd stay late, falling asleep on the couch with a blanket half slipping to the floor, the television humming softly in the background. I'd watch her sleep, her face calm again, and feel the kind of gratitude that doesn't need words. But healing has its own ghosts. One afternoon, while trimming roses in the garden, I saw a car parked at the edge of the street. Dark windows, engine idling. Stayed there too long. My pulse quickened, but I didn't move. After 10 minutes it drove off, leaving behind nothing but the faint smell of exhaust and the whisper of paranoia. I didn't tell Emma. There was no need to scare her unless it became real. That night I checked the locks twice, then 3 times. Old habits return easily. The quiet watchfulness of someone who's been betrayed before. Days later Mike called. "You might want to sit down," he said. Jake had resurfaced. Not here, not in person, but legally. He was challenging the settlement, claiming coercion, painting himself as the victim. My first reaction was laughter, dry, disbelieving laughter. "Let him," I said. "He can't rewrite the evidence." Still, I knew the game wasn't over. Men like him never accept clean endings. They claw at any loose thread. Emma was furious when she found out. "He can't keep doing this to us," she cried. I took her hands and looked her in the eyes. "Yes, he can try. But this time we won't hide. We'll face him out in the open." That was the night we decided. No more shadows, no more silence. Whatever came next, we'd fight it together. And if Jake wanted to play with truth again, he'd finally learn what it cost to challenge a woman who had already lost everything once. The court date arrived with gray skies and a drizzle that soaked everything it touched. I wore my husband's old coat. It still smelled faintly of cedar, and Emma stood beside me, calm but fierce. When we entered the courtroom, Jake was already there, sitting with that same smug half-smile, like he still believed charm could rewrite the past. He didn't look at me right away. He looked at Emma, trying to find the weakness he'd once exploited. She didn't flinch. The judge began with the formalities, voice steady, neutral. Jake's lawyer spoke first, weaving a story full of pity and performance, how Jake had been pressured, how he'd acted under confusion, how the emotional manipulation had left him signing things he didn't understand. Every lie fell flat, because truth was no longer a secret tucked in my drawer. It was a collection of files, videos, recordings, every bit of greed laid bare. Mike stood, calm as ever, and presented the evidence with the precision of a man who didn't need drama to win. When the clip of Jake's own voice played again in that solemn room, there was no laughter this time, only silence thick enough to taste. The judge leaned forward, reading through the papers quietly, then lifted her gaze. "Mr. Weston," she said slowly, "your claims have no merit. This court finds sufficient evidence of deliberate intent to defraud. Case dismissed with prejudice." The words echoed like a door slamming shut. Jake's face crumbled, the color draining until he looked almost translucent. For a fleeting moment, I didn't see a villain. I saw a hollow man, consumed by the very greed that had driven him here. Emma exhaled shakily beside me, and I reached for her hand. Outside, the rain had stopped, and the clouds were breaking just enough for sunlight to slip through, thin, quiet, but real. "It's over," she whispered. I looked at her and smiled softly. "No, sweetheart," I said. "It's just beginning." The world didn't explode when it ended. It just went quiet. Jake disappeared after that day, no more letters, no more phone calls, not even a rumor. It was as if the earth had finally swallowed his noise. Weeks turned into months and life began to feel like life again. The mornings smelled of coffee and rain. The evenings hummed with small talk and the sound of Emma's laughter floating through the kitchen. She'd started seeing someone new. A kind man from the clinic who brought her flowers, simple daisies, not roses. I could see the difference in her eyes this time. No performance, no pretending. She was free, and that freedom looked good on her. One afternoon, while cleaning the attic, I found the old box where I used to keep my husband's things. Letters, photographs, memories wrapped in dust. At the very bottom was a picture of us, me holding baby Emma, him smiling in that quiet way of his. I sat there for a long while, the house silent except for the faint ticking of the old clock downstairs. Everything we'd lost, everything we'd survived, had somehow led us here, to peace earned the hard way. Before I put the photo back, I wrote one line on the back of it. "Some lessons cost you everything, but they buy you truth." That night, Emma and I sat on the porch, the air soft and still. She leaned her head against my shoulder and said, "You know, Mom, you were right. Trust is a gift." I smiled, tracing the rim of my teacup. "And some gifts," I whispered, "you never give twice." The stars shimmered faintly above us, quiet witnesses to a story that had finally found its ending, not a perfect one but a true one. And for the first time in a long time, I let the silence feel safe. But what if I told you? Jake didn't really disappear? What if the story wasn't over, just waiting to begin again? This time with someone new at the door. If you want to know what happened next, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Grandma's Truth.